Welcome back. It's June 27th.
Yep.
And last week was Father's Day, and we talked a little bit about our dads. The kids did their little funny thing, and we kind of left it off with the end of our last Bible verse. It was Psalms 112, verse 7. They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. So I kind of said that would go into this episode. And then the verse we picked out for this week was Psalm 50:15. Call upon me in the day of trouble. I shall rescue you and you will honor me. On episode, I don't know what episode number that was going to be, but the one before Father's Day.
Yeah.
We kind of ended that with Ott was having symptoms. We'd been to clinics, bronchitis, walking through the airport.
Yeah, that was kind of the end of it, where it was like that trip going to and back from Wisconsin, flying through Chicago was the one that I was, somewhere along that trip. I can't remember for sure if it was going or coming back, that I had told Jennie, I was like, something's got to give.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something
definitely wasn't right. And so a little bit of a backstory before we get into the details of that week. Ott I had scheduled him a yearly check. I think it was like July 2nd.
Yeah.
Was that
just a physical?
Yeah, just, yearly checkup, with our primary care doctor. So when Ott called and was like, hey, something's really off. Like, I've got to get in sooner. And I was like, okay, well, I'll call and see if I can get you in.
Yeah.
I'll just move that appointment up. And so I called and was able to get him in.
Which I want to, like the Mercury thing, I think it was like a Friday, Saturday or Thursday, Friday, something. And we had talked about it. I had gotten home, and then you called like Monday morning. And got me in the same day.
Yes.
And this is all stemming back from the stuff right after the classic of, couple trips to the clinic, bronchitis, never cleared up.
Antibiotics,
inhaler,
steroids,
yeah,
all of it.
And so we're at like June 20.
I don't know the date. I'm
gonna say June 24th, somewhere in there.
Don't know.
So yeah, late June as a nearly 2 years ago of this, nearly exactly, was about when that was. But yeah, so go in on that Monday, and they listen to my chest. They do a whole regular physical, but given the symptoms and what I told them with my wheezing and that kind of stuff, they were like, let's just do a chest X-ray, because make sure that you don't have like walking pneumonia or something that has set up in your lungs, that's causing this deal. Okay. So they do the X-ray, and I don't guess they really look at them right then. That they don't.
No, they send them off to radiology.
Yeah, they send them off, and they called me on that one, and said, "Hey, we've read your X-rays, and it looks like your heart is misshapen." They're like, it's something they didn't. I don't remember them saying enlarged at that point. I remember them saying misshapen was what I remember them having said, and they're like that. It's not. It doesn't look the way it should. We have you an echocardiogram scheduled tomorrow at 1:00. I want to say it was the middle of the day. At such and such office. Can you make that appointment? You need to make that appointment, kind of deal. It was like, we've already got it scheduled. I need you to go. Like, I can go there. So I called Jennie. I'm like, hey, I said, like, my lungs were clear, but my heart is funny shaped or something. I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, we're like, okay. And he's like, well, I've got to go, have the echocardiogram. I'm like, okay, well, they'll tell us from there. I don't really feel like we
weren't overly concerned at that point, because that's like a misshaped heart. I mean, maybe it just read funny. It was kind of what I thought, honestly, was like X-ray. I didn't even consider what all that really meant. And I don't think we didn't even tell my parents or your mom or anything at that point, had we? I don't think.
No, because we were like, we'll go have that done and see.
And we'll figure out what they say. And the same deal. So the next day, I remember for sure that day we went and we were trying to film an episode on a river around here that was real small, terrible boat ramp. Like I could go into the whole fishing part of that, but it doesn't really matter. But the boat ramp was so bad that, and I remember the appointment being in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
We literally just tied the boat to the bank and just left it there. Like I put everything up and just left it. I mean, it's a public boat ramp in the kind of in the middle of nowhere, and I just left it there because I didn't. It would have been so hard to load it, come back to unload it to go fish again in the afternoon. Ended up raining a bunch. We didn't catch anything anyway, so it was a terrible day of fishing. But yeah, I went to that middle of the day. Went to that appointment, and that was really that echo. You know, it's essentially an ultrasound of your heart is essentially what they were doing. And they can measure all the valves, all the blood flow. Like I've had 1 or 2 done since then as kind of follow-ups. And, you know, so they talk understanding it more now. And they show me on the screen how, you know, they'll click to this image and how it shows how much blood is flowing one way and different stuff. It's really it's a neat thing to look at. But they can measure, they can get all different kinds of crazy measurements of valves and artery sizes and all this kind of stuff. But I know none of this at the time. I'm laying there on the table, and he's, you know, working that wand around on my chest and stuff. And at some point in time, the tech who's you know, doing the ultrasound, he says, and I'm there by myself, Jennie wasn't with me or anything. He says, "Does anybody ever mention anything about a murmur for you?" And I don't know much heart terms at this point in time, but I know a murmur, it's not really a big deal in and of itself.
Like you can have them and it not be a problem.
People have them forever, but I to my knowledge, a murmur is like, you know, something with your heart isn't flowing the right way.
Something like a hole in your heart.
Or maybe possibly a hole, but it's like, yeah, it can be a big deal or it can not be a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I mean, nobody's ever said I had a murmur. And he goes, huh. And then it's quiet. And I said, what's huh mean? Is that, well, yeah, you know, there's definitely reason for you to be feeling, you know, the kind of symptoms that you're feeling. I'm like, okay. And he's
but he can't really say anything else.
Yeah,
you know, he's kind of.
He said, man, I've probably said more than I should have already. He said, being a tech, you know, I'm not the one that reads these. It's not my job. I'm not supposed to tell you, you know, anything because I could be assuming. He's like, you know, I could get it wrong. He said but there is definitely reason for you to be feeling what you're feeling. At that point, I was kind of relieved.
Yeah, we were kind of like not crazy. You know, like, hey, there's something definitely going on. And of course, Ott calls and tells me, and I'm like, murmur. So, you know, of course, I'm Googling, you know, Google and I'm like, machine. Well, I think this is, you know, it's not going to, you know, not too bad. Yeah. Like, it might, you know, of course, again, not knowing any different. And so it was... And
not knowing how extreme the murmur was.
Yeah, and why there was a murmur, because it wasn't normal to have... He does not have a murmur. He did at that time, but not normally.
Yeah, and murmur, I think, is essentially the fact that you have backflow, you know, in your heart. It's not all flowing the way that it should. Mine was an extreme case of a murmur.
And so that was
on Tuesday. Yeah.
And so Friday.
No, Wednesday. So that they read that on Wednesday, the very next day.
Yeah.
The people, and that was when I was up at Kingsport, and they called.
And you didn't answer because he was catching so many fish.
We did. Me and Parker and Walt wore them out that day. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was if you've watched the episode of Flow on Mossy Go, or it's on our YouTube channel. The episode of Flow with myself and Parker and Walt was on there some catching some. That was filmed on this Wednesday when I got this call
that he ignored.
That I ignored while I was fishing.
And it showed. It said Dr. Cox was on. You know, like it showed that it was our Dr. Cox.
I'm pretty sure I was reeling one in. I was like, I'll call him back. I had no idea how serious any of this was.
I was with my girlfriend at the gym, and when I was still going, but that's a whole different JOJ episode. So anyway, I was with my friend, and we were on ellipticals, and my phone starts ringing, and it shows up Dr. Cox, and I'm like, oh, it's my doctor. I should probably answer this.
Seems
so then I thought, well, then I knew Ott was fishing, so I was like, well, he may not have service. So
yeah, that's what I didn't have service.
And that's what I believed until he was like, no, I was just really catching him. So I answer it, and he's like, hey, he's like, I'm calling. I called Ott and everything, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, so we've looked at the echo, and he starts telling me how he's got a valve that is just kind of, blowed wide open, and he's getting backflow of blood into his lungs, and that's why he can't breathe, and and it's definitely going to require some kind of surgery. And so I was like, okay, and I'm still kind of on my elliptical, and then like I was like, so we're supposed to go to Wisconsin Friday for a tournament, and he's like, Jennie, you're not going to Wisconsin.
Yeah,
and to know our doctor, like, I mean, he's been Ott's doctor since he was a kid. He's done all of our babies, and he's like good, lighthearted, cut up kind of guy. But I mean, his tone and his voice was just
like, he's like, no, you ain't going anywhere. He's. I mean, you could almost be dying. He's like, oh, you're fine. I mean,
That's not true.
I mean, he's a really good doctor and very calm.
Yes, he is very calm.
He's not going to blow stuff out of proportion by any means.
No, but I could tell, I mean, his voice. And so I just kind of stop. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, so what does surgery entail? Because when he first said surgery, like, I'm thinking, you could do all this stuff like a scopic, like, what I'm trying to say.
Laparoscopically?
Yes, that. Which is very minimal, like that kind of stuff. And so when he first said that, that's kind of where my mind went.
Because they do stents, and I mean,
they do your leg and all,
groin,
all that stuff. So, and he was like, well, he said, I'm not really sure. You're gonna have to meet with a cardiologist. He said, it may be open heart surgery, it may not. And then it just like, well, no, like, this is serious. Like, and my friend Beth at the time, she's like, get off the elliptical. Like, she's like, just go over there. And so I'm like, okay. I'm like, so, what are our next steps? And he's like, I'm going to get you scheduled with the cardiologist. Like, I'm like, is this something that's like needs to be fixed now? Is it, because I don't know. Like, if it's like urgent, like, do I need to go get him and bring him to the hospital? Like, and I'm thinking he's an hour and a half away, and he's probably not going to answer my call either. You did. So I get off, so he's like, we'll get it scheduled. But yeah, it has to be done soon. And so, get off the phone with him. I call Ott, and we were just catching him. And I'm like, well, you need surgery, and it could be open heart. Like, I think I just blurted it out. Like, I don't.
Like, you're going to have surgery. It could be open heart surgery. We don't really know yet. I'm like, do I need to like?
Yeah, he was like, should I come home?
Sit down in the boat and walk very slowly to the seat and drive home, or I mean, is this?
Yeah, because it's like.
Because I think then I called after I talked with you. I think you were like, I don't really know. Just call the doctor back.
Because I was just so overwhelmed with just.
And so I'm pretty sure I did. I'm pretty sure I called him back, and he's like, no. I mean, stay and fish the rest of the day, but he's like, don't do jumping jacks or
Yeah.
But you're okay to do what you're doing, but yeah, you probably won't be going. You shouldn't go to that tournament this weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like, I can't tell you absolutely don't, but you really shouldn't go.
Yeah, and of course for us, like, we're how old are we? 30.
I was 33. You were 34.
33 and 34. We don't have a cardiologist. Like, we've never had to deal with any of this, and I'm like, I just. I'm uneasy about it. I'm like, I know Dr. Cox would never send us to somebody he didn't trust. But you just don't know. Mm-hmm. And so, like, we were praying heavily over, and at the time we didn't know that our cardiologist wouldn't be our surgeon, because there's some that do both. Yeah. And we ended up with the heart surgeon and a cardiologist. But, and so we go Friday, and I'm just kind of like, I tell Ott, I'm like, a lot of times when they're really good doctors, the bedside manner's usually not there. Yeah. Like, as long as he's good at his job is really all that matters. So he walks in and just, kind of says, hey, this is what's going on. Yeah. Your mitral valve, you've got 3 little leaflets, and this little guy is open. Like, it's just like almost not even there anymore. And so, he starts. He was the
surgeon.
No, but Dr. Akhtar talked about being, that how God designed your heart perfectly. And, you know, because, of course, we were praying for a godly man, and, like, was within the first minute. He was like, you know, you could get we can either try to repair this or you could get a mechanical valve. He's like, but God designed your heart perfect, and I want to, you know, if we can fix it, that's what we're going to go for. And he said, you know, but I'm not a surgeon, but, you know, Dr. Jones is where we went, and they are like BFFs. They go overseas and do mission work and fix mitral valve repairs. Like, this is what they do. Yeah. And so, you know, we were just immediately in that moment comforted, like we knew we were where we needed to be. Yeah. He's like, we've got to do a heart cath to make sure there's no other issues. They didn't feel like there were, but, you know, got to make sure that it's...
His analogy with that rubbed well with me. I'm not a mechanic. I mean, a fisherman's what I am. but I know enough about mechanics. But his analogy with that was like, before we get under the hood, we want to know all the problems. We don't want to crack the hood open and then be like, oh, we didn't know this was going on. He's like, we want to be prepared for everything. He's like, that's truly the only reason we're even doing a heart cath. He's like, because we can actually get in there, we can look around, we can see exactly what is broken, know exactly how to be prepared, and so when we go in, we have no surprises whatsoever. So that was the reason for the heart cath. And that was that consultation. That's the word I was looking for. Was on Friday. And the heart cath, we scheduled that for Monday. And everything we were able to do in Knoxville. You know, everything was right here. Pretty close to home.
And so we went to get the heart cath Monday. And all of that, I mean, everything else looked great. But, I mean, like, the thing that stuck with me is when, like, they come wheeling him back and, or, you know, like, to recovery or whatever, and they let me come back. And, you know, he comes in to talk to us, and he's just like, looks at Ott and looks at me. He's like, y'all don't know how, like, blessed you are. You didn't come in here on totally different circumstances. Yeah.
He said the pressures inside my heart were not my blood pressure, but literally the pressures inside what were so high, which was, to my knowledge at this point now, that's what caused the misshapedness. You know, that pressure, you know, your heart should be shaped, you know, like a fist. That pressure is what caused part of my heart to swell. You know, because that area was working so hard where the blood was going the wrong way so much of the time.
Where it wasn't getting, the proper.
And that's what caused my heart to swell, which is essentially what showed up, but it was because the pressure were so high. And it is the kind of thing that had I neglected it, it would have, I mean, at some point in time.
It would have been catastrophic.
It would have been. I mean, it would have, pretty much would have been life-ending, almost 100% certainty. Was it after the call on Wednesday when we knew I was going to have surgery that we told people on Facebook Live to get people to start praying for us? Or when was that?
We went on Facebook because we weren't going to be at the tournament. So we went and said Friday, I think. It was either Friday or Saturday. You know, we were kind of like, we can just not say nothing, or we kind of tossed, you know, we weren't really sure what we wanted to do with that yet. But we weren't going to be at the tournament. And I was like, so people are going to start questioning why we're not there. I was like, let's just be honest, like, where we're at. Like, we could use all the prayers we can get right now.
Absolutely.
So we did. We went live a few times, just kind of updating. We had a couple news stations come out because obviously this is right after his win.
So 3 months after the Classic.
We've been in limelight, especially in Knoxville.
Yeah.
You know, so they were all very much wanted to know what was going on. We did keep what day you were having surgery quiet. We didn't say. Just because, we, you know, I was like, I'd rather just do that privately, and then, you know, we can update thereafter. Yeah. And so, or like, I think I may have posted that morning that he was going into surgery. But yeah, so we met with him, or had the heart cath Monday, and then Tuesday was our first consult with the heart surgeon. Yeah. And so he comes in.
And that was when, I think it was then, like with the cardiologist, he had told us, you know, that he would put us with a good surgeon, but we didn't really realize that the two were such
best
close friends.
Yeah,
until we went and met with
And I think
the surgeon.
He had asked, he was like, do you have an appointment? And I was like, yeah, we actually already have an appointment tomorrow. And he was like, oh, that like never happens. Like he was shocked that we were so quick in this process. And so, we met with him. So we went next morning
Yeah.
and go meet with him. And we weren't in the room 30 seconds and his phone rings. And he's like, oh, it's Dr. Echocardiogram now. So they have a whole conversation about us.
Yeah, while we're sitting there, yeah.
And I guess maybe he had already talked about how he was going to do the surgery. Was that after? Maybe he was talking about doing the surgery. And he was like, well, I have openings tomorrow or like
Monday.
next week.
Yeah.
And we were like,
we'll do that one tomorrow.
we'll do the one tomorrow. We want to get this over with.
Yeah.
Because at this point in time, like, Ott's afraid to do anything. Like, he's just kind of like, I don't, like,
yeah.
I
need to sit on the couch.
We kind of both feel like he may blow up at any moment. That's kind of our,
And I mean, we'll take it back up on the heart cath.
Yeah.
The cardiologist with that, he was like, listen, I know what you do. He looked us up and stuff. He knew what I did for a living. And they typically always do that through your wrist.
Yeah, heart cath.
They do almost all those through your wrist, unless there's just some reason they can't anymore. He said, and they never have any trouble. He's like, but I'm not doing it through your wrist. I know what you do for a living. I'm not taking a chance of making messing anything up.
Yeah, he was like, I'm not going to be that guy that messes up your wrist.
Yeah, so my heart cath was done through my groin.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm like, that didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're here the day after and I could have surgery the next day, so I don't have to like heal up a week and then get cut open again. I'm like, let's do that one tomorrow. I'm not going to feel good anyway. Let's go ahead and get it over with.
Let's just be done with this.
Yeah.
So we went from that to, okay, we're going to have heart surgery in the morning.
Yeah.
And all within 10 days.
10 days. So from Monday of going to my primary care, of getting that appointment, that should have been, so to when surgery day is scheduled now on a Wednesday, my original physical should have been like a week later than that.
Than that date, yep.
So you back that up that far, and we went from Monday to a Wednesday in a week.
Yep, and of course we don't know it at the time, but as we're going through this, like, we find out that the surgeon and Dr. Jones is like one of the highest qualified. He can do this with a robot. He didn't have his robot here, so he was just doing it normal freehand. But he was already in the midst of moving, like when we met him. And so had we waited and waited it out to Ott's appointment, we would have never even, if he didn't blow up between now and then, we would have never even saw Dr. Jones. He wouldn't have even been an option. So, like, we knew, like, after, obviously as we, like, look and start seeing all these pieces go together, that God was just like,
orchestrated all of it.
It was like, nope, you're going to go from here to here to here, see this guy. Like, we didn't even see Dr. Jones after our checkups. He was already moved.
Yeah.
So, it's just been, it was just amazing to kind of look back and see how all that worked. And that was
even and I've told the people at Mercury, I'm like, you all having that event could have saved my life. Yeah. It really could have, because
had we been home, you probably wouldn't have paid much attention to it, no more than what you already were.
Right. So, but having to walk through that airport in Chicago was like, that was the deal. That was like something, something's got to change or something just ain't right. But it's cool. It's really cool to look at it all and have that ability to see every little piece that God put in place, to make that all happen the way that it did.
Yeah. So I think we're end it here. That it's wake up and it's surgery day.
Yep.
Next week's 4th of July.
That's right.
And we're gonna go live. Maybe
we'll be
just.
Home. Should be home.
Yes, we'll be home. Yeah. We talked about doing it a little bit later with fireworks, but that might be a little distracting. So we might just do it early evening, kind of keep it short, and
we might go live just with some fireworks later.
Maybe, We'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Yep. But verse again, Psalm 50:15 says, "Call upon me in the day of trouble. I shall rescue you, and you will honor me." Yeah. So thank you all for watching again, and
we'll see you next week live.
See you next week.